All right, it is 10 o'clock. So welcome to those of you who are attending live. Looks like we've got a handful on the webinar already. We may have additional people joining us in the next few minutes. Don't want to be too late though, and be sure to give Orchid her full amount of time. We had 49 people registered, which well exceeded my expectations for our webinar, which is really exciting when I know a lot of people in the last year are probably a little webinared out. But welcome again to our first in the series of Water and Fire and Plants Oh My by the City of Big Bear Lake Department of Water. Thank you guys for joining us this morning. Oops, a little quick there. This, as I mentioned, is the first of 9. Our featured presenter today is Orchid Black. She is going to be our presenter the first Wednesday of each month from now through September. So she is presenting for us today on Big Bear native plants. Next month, she'll be doing rain gardens and swales. And then the 1st of September, she'll be doing creating habitat. So inviting pollinators into our gardens and stuff like that. Next up, next week, we've got Douglas Kent, who is an expert on Firewise landscaping. He's going to be the 2nd Wednesday of each month. And then the 3rd Wednesday of each month is going to be Laura Allen, who is an expert on gray water systems. And she will also lead us through September, including a session on saving your trees during a drought. As you may have heard, these webinars will be recorded, and we plan to make them available for viewing later. So I do suspect that many of our registered participants are going to choose that route. The first 5 BBLDWP customers to register for each series and attend live get free gifts. So kudos to those of you who are our customers and who are attending live today. That makes you eligible for our free gifts. We're going to have actual native plants. We're going to have books from each of the authors. We're going to have all kinds of goodies to be giving away. So I am taking notes of who is here live with us today, and we'll be notifying you as soon as we have those items in stock and ready to give out to you. If you have not registered for the entire webinar series, we encourage you to do so, or at least register for those sessions that are of interest to you. They are open to all Big Bear Valley residents, property owners, and businesses. Just have to email us at conservation@bbldwp.com. Let us know which days you want to register for, or if you want all of them. Be sure to include your service address so we know whether or not you are a DWP customer to reserve your space. We also have the registration link posted on our Facebook, so you can go that route as well. We're just trying to save everybody that extra step, and we can register you as well. And then just kind of going over some housekeeping. If anybody needs to take a break, of course, you are welcome to take a break as you need to. Go use the restroom, go to, do your work, whatever you need to do. If you have any questions, feel free to use that Q&A panel. That should be a little speech bubble at either the top or the bottom of your screen, depending on how you have your webinar set up. You can ask questions throughout. However, most of those questions will be addressed at the end of the session, because we don't want to keep interrupting just for stuff that will probably be covered later in the presentation. So feel free to use that Q&A panel. If we hear Orchid answer that live, we'll go ahead and try to type the answers into the Q&A panel so that you can see that and have it written out. And if she doesn't answer it live, we're going to get to those at the end of the session. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Orchid Black. She is a native plant expert, garden designer, writer, lecturer, and owner of Native Sanctuary. For many Big Bear locals, you will recognize her from our xeriscape garden tours over the many years. She's usually our native plant expert, and she comes and joins us at the xeriscape garden and is there for people. So welcome, Orchid. I'll let you go ahead and take over.
Okay, hi, welcome everyone. Don't have more to say about myself. I'm gonna wait until they pull their share screen off so I can share my screen.
Stop. All right.
Okay. So let me make sure that my program is forward, and then that I can share. And here we are, Big Bear getting started with native plants. And Firefox would like me to do something, and I'm just not going to do that. And put it in presentation mode. And here we are. We have a Big Bear garden. This garden, if you ever went on the Xeriscape tour, you may recognize it. It's the Otterstrom garden, of which I have many, many pictures. I'm going to start with where we are in space because place matters for plants. Oh yeah, this is a water talk. I'll talk more about water in my next session, but Lake Mead is lower than less than half capacity right now, and they're starting to worry that it's getting so low that we cannot draw down water. So California is a Mediterranean climate. Many of you who live down the hill and have ever taken a native plant class may have seen a slide like this. Mediterranean climates are on the western leading edge of continents, but the important part about that for us right now is that California is also a biodiversity hotspot. And you'll see that these two slides look a lot alike. And that's because Mediterranean biomes are biodiversity hotspots, and because they're where everyone wants to live, they are also threatened. Big Bear is also a biodiversity hotspot for plants in all of Canada and North America, including Canada and Mexico. Big Bear has more plants than any other place. It has a fraction of California's land, but almost a third, I think, of the plants of California. So California has endemism, plants that only grow here due to an island effect. Plants can't go west over the water or mostly east over the mountains or the desert. So they are isolated, and therefore they speciate, which means they make more species. And so here we have the San Bernardino Mountains topography, and we see that it is uplifted and there's desert behind and Mediterranean biome in front or below. And we call this side the cismontane side, and we call this the transmontane side. And it's high enough that it had the southernmost glaciation. So that's an important influence on Big Bear, that there was glaciation in the San Bernardino Mountains. And then topography means that the sea brings warm, moist air, and then we get precipitation when that air rises. And then on the desert side, we have a rain shadow. So here's a picture looking east. So this is the south side on the right, and that shows the marine layer. And if you've ever wondered what the difference is between coastal sage scrub and chaparral, chaparral is actually above the marine layer. So when people say Malibu is chaparral and it's burning, that's not really technically true. But we have the San Gorgonio in the background. And then on the other side, we have the desert side, and the desert has a huge influence on Big Bear. So we have three influences: the alpine influence, the desert influence, and the coastal marine influence. So that makes Big Bear a unique place. We have other places in California that have montane but not alpine. We have other places in California that have marine but not desert, but we don't have all three coming together. So you can see it's an island of high precipitation or higher precipitation, but you can also see that there's more precipitation to the west of us, and that as it gets toward the San Bernardino Mountains right here, the precipitation starts to fall off. And it falls off with a kind of a rain shadow effect heading from west east, so that the west end of Big Bear Lake has almost double the precipitation that the east end of Big Bear Lake has, and areas like Lake Arrowhead have double the precipitation that Big Bear has. So There are several plant communities. I'm not going to address all of them today, but mostly the ones that people live in and that we have plants that we can actually buy from. So we have yellow pine forest. We have what's called by the Forest Service yellow pine forest with black oak woodland understory, although that is mostly as you get to Sugarloaf, there's not that much pine and there's a lot more oak woodland. And then we have meadow, riparian, and riparian just means river or creekside or alluvial. Then we have pinyon juniper woodland, and I'm not going to address that today. And then we have some desert influence as we get to the east end of the mountains and past Baldwin Lake. And in those areas, the desert influence is stronger. And that also includes the pebble plains and carbonate areas of rarity. So yellow pine forest, that's where most people live in Big Bear. That's Jeffrey pine, mostly with understory of what's called hard-leaved shrubs. So coffeeberry, some currants and gooseberries. And some people will say, well, and not much else. But that's mostly because your yard was weed whacked and raked since the 40s. So there would be something there if we hadn't done that. But here's our montane meadow, Bluff Lake on the left, and a meadow near Mill Creek on the right. And I'm just going to show a couple of montane meadow species, our famous lemon lily, some sneezeweed. Also, we do have a large native orchid. Actually, we have several. We have a slipper orchid in Northern California that's also large. We have some miniature orchids. And then, of course, we have the desert influence. And I took this at the east end of Big Bear, closer to the north side. And that's I think a pharaoh cactus, but I could be wrong. I'm not actually that good at cacti. So native perennials for Big Bear. So the structure of the talk is going to be mostly the plants of Big Bear, or the plants. Almost all these plants are native to Big Bear. If they aren't, I will let you know. And then toward the end of the talk, I'm going to talk about how we put them in. So this one is obviously more of a desert influenced poppy. It's called prickly poppy, and it is in the same poppy family as like breadseed poppies and California poppy. And some of you who know native plants from down below might realize that it looks a lot like the Matilaha poppy, which is sometimes called the fried egg flower. And you can almost think of this as a miniature, like a 1 foot version of the prickly poppy. So as you get out toward Baldwin Lake, this one grows very easily. So our most adaptable plant is the yarrow. It will grow in sun or shade and wet or dry. Here it is in a garden that has alluvial influence. It can make a nice, beautiful drift. And here's a close-up of the flower, and gorgeous. And then it is, but even though it looks delicate, it's super sturdy. This is it coming up in the middle of a sidewalk in Altadena in full sun. So it could grow in the shade or in full sun with no problem. It does need a little more water than some plants, but it does sometimes grow on dry slopes. So it really depends on what you're looking for as to how much you water it. Another kind of more wet species is the Western Columbine, and I have seen it grow in dry shade, although, or actually not dry shade, but watered shade. But it really looks best in the sun, and this is at the Big Bear Community Garden behind the demonstration garden. So here's another columbine, the yellow pubescens. This is the Sierra columbine. There's also the blue columbine, which isn't native, but would grow fine with these plants. The difference is really who is the pollinator, and If we go back and look at the red species, we can tell that the hummingbird is the pollinator here. And then speaking of pollinator plants, and I am going to give a whole talk on pollinator plants, so I'm not going to address the milkweeds at length right here. We do have a couple, actually several native milkweeds, and our milkweeds are not the yellow and orange one, just so you know. And the yellow and orange one is problematic and can spread disease to monarchs and other butterflies. So we want to plant the native one, and used to be hard to get, but people are working really hard at the nurseries to make sure they are available. And they do have this beautiful creamy, pearly, sometimes cream white flower in summer, and everything loves this plant. Then we go, this is not the best picture, I'm so sorry, but almost all my other pictures are the best one ever. But this one is hard to take a picture of. It is the native Aster, and it is a beautiful plant that flowers in about a month. In August, they start blooming. They are very floriferous, and they have that light purple and yellow daisy-like flower. And sometimes you see it in this darker color. This is in a completely unwatered state. So both of those pictures are just no water at all in sunny locations. It'll take a tiny bit of shade, but you don't see it in darker conditions. There are a bunch of cultivated varieties, and I'm showing this just so that you know it can come in different forms, although I'm not positive that the cultivated varieties would actually grow in Big Bear, or at least the flat ground cover variety is really coastal. And so you never know if the genetics will work. Sometime I should try it, but I'm not really willing to swamp the genetics of the local Aster, so I haven't. This one could be in the shrub portion. I'm gonna treat perennials and shrubs, but this is really not very big. So I thought I'd keep it with its cousins. And this one has that kind of a miniature single rose kind of flower. And it comes in yellow and in white. This one is not local to Big Bear, but it's a nice little shrub, like 3 by 3. So the perfect little, shrub size for an accent shrub. And so I included it in here because it's easy to get. I mean, this is a plant you could even mail order, and it's very durable, and it is a high elevation species. And then our more local potentilla, these have all moved to dry Michaelis, but I'm going to keep calling them potentilla. And so the common name is cinquefoil, but almost everyone I know still says potentilla. And this has kind of almost like a strawberry flower, and they sometimes grow together. The strawberry flowers are white, and this one is yellow. And it can make big drifts. This is unwatered in nature, just a huge drift of potentilla looking really beautiful. And so it is often found in slightly more moist areas, and when I say moist, I don't mean wet at all, but more at the bottom of a dry slope than at the top of a dry slope. And since water, is affected by gravity, the bottom of the slope is going to have more water underground. Then one of the stars of our show is the Eriogonum umbellatum, the sulfur flowered buckwheat. I've seen this one in the San Bernardinos, not in cultivation, but this one is in cultivation at the demonstration garden. And it has flowers that start out yellow, and then they will fade to rust, just like all the buckwheats do. This is a perfect mound of, it can get up to 2.5 feet wide, but often it's about 1.5 feet high by 2 feet wide. This one will grow in full blazing sun or in A pretty shady condition, not in the dark, but in what we call high filtered shade, which is what we have in that Oprah Jeffrey pine forest. So I have a few pictures of that, and in bright yellow, which is its common color. Sometimes it's a little more gold than this picture. And then we have the Eriogonum radii subscaposum, which just means it is the flat variety. Some of you may be familiar from the pebble plains of Eriogonum kennedyi, and this is very closely related, but a little larger in form. It's about 6 inches high by 2 feet wide at best. And it is kind of a pink and white and very graceful and delicate, and mostly for sun. This one gets kind of unhappy if you want to put it in the shade, and it will sulk. But we have plenty of plants for shade, so we're not worried. Then we have the Golden Yarrow, which is not really a yarrow, although it looks like it. It's in the same sunflower family as yarrow and aster and all the daisy plants. So if you look at those flowers, they could be a miniature daisy. This is again for sunny area on the south-facing slope. So I commonly see it along the Rim of the World Highway, in the rocks, growing right out of rocks. And in this picture, you can see I put it with rocks, just for the extra heat. And it's a happy plant, and pollinators do love it. And then we have, this used to be Zauschneria. So if you learned this from Zauschneria, that's what it is. The montane version is Epilobium canum latifolium. And there are a couple, like Everett's Choice, cultivated varieties that should grow fine up here. This blooms late in the season from August to about October. And again, it often is found draping off rocks in a south side sunny slope area. So that's where you want to put it. I've seen it in areas of patchy shade, but it's mostly been in the sun in those areas. And then we have our spring Western Wallflower. This is not exactly a wildflower. It is a perennial. It's kind of a short-lived perennial in the mustard family, but the flowers are much bigger, and they do have a light fragrance. And this is one of the first plants to come out. And this one is available in the trade, not just as seed, but not very often. So you have to look at plant sales for it. We have our woodland strawberry, and this is one of my favorite plants. This does require some moisture to look its best, and it does look its best in a high filtered shade, not necessarily in the dark and not necessarily in full sun. As you can see in this picture, it is in part shade. And the difference between part shade, by the way, and high filtered shade is that light that filters through through the trees, and part shade is more like the side of your house where it might get morning sun but not afternoon sun, or vice versa. So those are kind of two different things, although sometimes we use them interchangeably, and probably I shouldn't. Anyway, it does have those cute little strawberry flowers. It is a spreading plant, so you can just put in 1 gallon. It would spread to cover at least 4 feet over time, like not tomorrow, right? But over time, and a couple of years. And then it does have a huge amount of berries. Those berries are tiny, about the size of the tip of my littlest finger, but they have all the flavor of a larger strawberry concentrated into that small strawberry. And basically how they bred the bigger strawberries was up from some 2 or 3 native strawberries. And although some people say the European strawberry was involved, but now they say that this species and that species are the same. But how they bred those strawberries was just by selecting for high water content and high sugar content, giving you a bigger berry. So just like wild blueberries have more flavor than cultivated blueberries, wild strawberries do too. And then we do have iris. This is the heartwag's iris, but you see closer to Big Bear also the marsh iris. And as you can imagine, that one does need some moisture. And I have seen it in marshy areas north of the lake. This one is a plant of dry slopes, and it comes in a range of colors. And the marsh iris I've seen in cultivation, and the heartwag's iris I really haven't. But I'm throwing this picture in because I have lots and lots of pictures of heartwag's iris. They grow profusely near me. This is a montane species of coral bells. Most of the coral bells that you get at the nursery will not be native, but this one is a native one. And if you're looking for a native cultivar, you can look for Euchera rubescens Yosemite. But this one is probably Euchera elegans, which you sometimes can find, and also there's Euchera hirsutissima. So you don't have to remember all those things. Just remember that coral bells are an easy plant for shade, or in the mountains, a little bit of sun. Hummingbirds do work them extensively. The hummingbird will work each and every flower. I've seen that, up close and personal. And they're also cute for a pot. They don't really need that much water, and very, very easy plant for ground cover in a filtered shady location with rocks. They grow on the north slope mostly of the mountains. This is a Lewisia cultivar. There is also a Clarkia, so Lewis and Clark, which I'm not going to show you today because I was trying to keep my species amounts down. But I found that the species do better for me than the cultivated varieties, although the cultivated varieties have not died. And these plants you can see in nature just grow right out of the rocks. So they put them in this pot with gravel. And some of the species are just pure white up here, but some of them have kind of a white striped flower. And pretty easy. They need a little bit of water, and they do need some sun. We have the blue flax. This is one of my favorites because I'm a sucker for blue. And this is a detail, and they grow on these kind of airy blue clouds. If they're happy, they can be as much as 2 feet by 2 feet, or more often 18 inches by 18 inches. They do best with a little extra supplemental water, I've found, and sun and part sun, but not full shade. And here's kind of more of a cloud with some salvia in the background. This is one of the stars of our show, and it's not really a water-saving plant. It grows in marshy areas or right next to the river, but I couldn't resist doing this. And this plant is available in cultivation. I showed you the lemon lily before, and in fact, this particular plant is in a garden. But it's not that hard to grow, but you do have to pour water on it. So it could only really be part of your rain garden if you're trying to save water. And then we have our favorite grape soda lupin. This one does really smell like grape soda. And this one really, really, really wants to be in the bright sun and not too much water. Enough water to get established, and then don't be killing it with kindness. It's a beautiful small plant for, it can be larger. I think I've seen it larger, honestly, in nature than I have seen it in cultivation. But if you have a dry south-facing slope or a dry west-facing slope, this is your plant. And here's a detail of it that I actually took both of these pictures in the Big Bear area. This one was on on a CNPS trip, so you can see another botanist in the background. And you can see that lots and lots of pollinators come to lupins. We do have some water-loving lupins as well, but grape soda is a great one for dry areas. And then we have Monardella. I cannot promise you that your Monardellas are going to look like this, but this is a plant that is a mint, but not a running mint. It's just a small herbaceous clump. Sometimes when it's looking perfect, it can be, you know, a 15-inch by 15-inch clump that's perfectly rounded mound. But this is a nice drift of them. They do smell like mint. The butterflies do love this plant. This one is a bully in Big Bear and very difficult to get established anywhere else, I have to say. Some of you may know the Otterstroms, and they used to enjoy a beverage in the late evening while watching these open. So they don't open until 4 o'clock or on a cloudy day because they are moth pollinated. And I have weeded this out of Big Bear Garden. So if nothing will grow for you, try to find this plant. It's not often in the trade, and so you might have to go to plant sales. And if you're looking for some of the plants that are harder to find on this list, you might want to think about places like the Rancho Santa Ana Botanic Garden sale, or the Riverside Botanic Garden sale, or Calling Tree of Life. And then, so the pensamins could be their whole own talk, but I'm just going to talk about some of the ones that are easy to get that grow in Big Bear. There's a few others that I'm not going to talk about. Caesius grows here, but it's really hard to find in the trade. That's a blue one. This is Poodle Dog Bush in the background. I think this is a post-fire picture with Bumblebee Pensamin on the right, and Penstemon centranthifolius or Scarlet Bugler on, Bumblebee Pensamin on the left and Scarlet Bugler on the right. There are 4 native red pensamins on the mountain, so I'm going to talk about 2 of them. And Penstemon, Eaton's Penstemon is probably the easiest one to get, and this is a pensamin that's found on the desert floor, but also in Big Bear. This one is, I think, the easiest one to find and the easiest one to grow, and it has this really bright red flower. Pensamin centranthifolius has a slightly duller red flower, as we saw in the previous picture. And then Bridges Penstemon, I don't have a picture of, is also more to the dull red, although it's beautiful and it does grow in the shade, and is common, you know, all along the whole mountain range. Then we have Penstemon Grinelli, which is Bumblebee Penstemon, and this one has guides for the bumblebees that show them where to go. As you can see, those stripes are guides to guide your bumblebee right in there. And if you're trying to grow food on the mountain and you want to attract pollinators, this is a great plant for all the things that are pollinated by bumblebees. I'll just go back and say that this one, although I usually see it around the Arctic Circle and places like that in full sun, it has grown in pretty shady location and spread throughout my garden. And so it's an easy plant. If you're like, I have a lot of shade and nothing will grow for me, I would try this plant. And then we have rabbit ear penstemon. So rabbit ear and Bridges are almost exactly alike in their flower, but rabbit ear is more of a clump and Bridges is more of a single plant. I will say that neither of them is easy to find anymore. I used to be able to find rabbit ear penstemon all the time. It's sometimes called San Gabriel penstemon, although I've seen it in the ground at Green Valley Lake in that marsh area on the trail on the way. And here it is in the demonstration garden. And I want to caution everyone that demonstration garden has a couple things that you may not have. And one of them is silty soil. So everything there is just a little bigger than it might be in your garden. And so, but if you haven't been down there, I suggest that you go and just take a look. Right now is a great time. Also at that garden is showy penstemon. This is like a 2-foot high plant, or I've even seen it get 3 feet high. This is for full sun in the mountains and actually anywhere. This is a sulky plant that will not grow in shade. It does really, really well though in full sun and dry conditions. So the same conditions as the California fuchsia and the Lupinus excubitus, just what we might consider really harsh conditions with not too much water. Some of these plants just need a little water to get established, and then they'll just grow for you. And they don't want you to help them too much after that. It is planted in a garden at Tree of Life Nursery. If you've never been there, it's a great field trip. They have extensive grounds with many plants planted there. Penstemons are tough. So here's the penstemon growing right out of the rock. I think this is probably Penstemon granelli. But with no flowers, penstemons are very difficult to tell. And you can see that not only is it growing there, but it flowered extensively. So it's a happy plant. This plant looks like a desert plant, and I've seen it look amazing in Ansa Borrego, but it also looks amazing out towards Sugarloaf. So this is, again, a full sun because it's a desert plant. You can water it a little bit in the summer for extra bloom. Really, really is a beautiful, beautiful plant. Easy. Some people include it in the shrubs, but it's kind of tender, and shrubs are supposed to be woody, so I include it here. And then, you know, who could resist that? It does come in various other, you know, light colored shades. There is a darker coral shade in the trade, but it hasn't done well for me, so I did not include it in this picture. But mostly the standard color is the light bright orange, the apricot, that gives it its name. Easy, again, don't water it too much, and full blazing sun. Then we have, for a shady or sunny location, the goldenrod. People used to think that the goldenrod was what gave them hay fever, but it turns out it is that ambrosia that blooms at the same time, or what we call a ragweed. Here it is backed up by the Ericameria nauseosa, or rabbit brush, in this picture at the demonstration garden. This is an easy creeping ground cover, and really, really important for butterflies in the fall. And I'll talk about the butterfly plants extensively in the pollinator class. Here it is in a garden and doing well. And so in the fall, you can still have beautiful flowers, beautiful native flowers, with the aster and the California fuchsia and the goldenrod, and still be cheerful. And then we have Cicerynchium bellum. This plant is found in montane meadows, but it doesn't need as much moisture as you would think, a little bit more than some plants. So more like the yarrow, but it does make this beautiful, like, miniature iris flowers in a cluster, and then it goes fully dormant after that. So you have it for the spring and then you don't have it anymore. But no one can resist those flowers. And in fact, it is present as on the cover of California Native Plants for the Garden. So native shrubs for Big Bear, I haven't included every shrub that grows here, but mostly plants which are available in cultivation. So this one, okay, I'm kind of cheating on this one. I found it in cultivation like twice. This is the Utah serviceberry, around sugarloaf, in that black oak woodland. It could be, up to like 15 feet tall. In my garden, closer to the Lake Arrowhead side, it's really 4 feet tall, and I feel sad. It does have edible berries, and the beautiful flowers in the rose family. I don't know if they're fragrant. This is a beautiful bush with kind of little silver dollar kind of leaves, and real easy. It can stand. It is, again, one of those adaptable shrubs that can take either water or no water and sun or a little bit of shade, not lots. And then on your plant list is Arctostaphylos glauca, although I'm not really confident. Mike Evans gave me this picture, but I'm not really confident that it is one of the ones that grows up here. We have some other ones that aren't really in cultivation, the pink one, Perry, and the other pink one, Pringlei, and Glandulosa, which no one grows because it's glandular, so it's sticky. But we do have the star of our show as far as manzanitas in the Big Bear area is the Greenleaf Manzanita, and I've seen this only in cultivation twice again. And a third time, but it was the Northern California form, which isn't really as bright green, but it has these beautiful bright green leaves and bright white flowers, and it's a low, up to say 5 feet, I would say 5 feet by closer to 6 or 8 feet wide. So it can be large, although my guess is that in garden conditions, it would be a lot smaller. For some reason, some plants grow bigger in the garden and some plants grow bigger in nature, and this is one of them. So manzanitas have beautiful berries, which were used for cider by native people who lived here and continue to live here. As we know, we have lots of reservations in the San Bernardino area. But they have the beautiful urn-shaped flowers, somewhat like if you've ever grown a blueberry. They are in the same heather family. And hummingbirds do use manzanita extensively, and it's one of the ways that hummingbirds have food in nature right away. So then we have berberis. Berberis is in the San Bernardino Mountains, the more than one berberis, and this is in cultivation down in Rancho Santa Ana Botanic Garden. Now it's California Botanic Garden, but I can never keep that straight anymore. It does have beautiful, beautiful yellow flowers, and it comes in this taller version, Golden Abundance, which is a cross of, I think, 3 species in the San Bernardino Mountains, although I think they downgraded that to 2 species. This one will grow in the dark, although it flowers better in the sun. This is about 6 by 6, although, and I've seen it on the mountains get at 6 feet tall, but not 6 feet wide. Those flowers are stunning, and this would be a nice, barrier plant because it does have those kind of pokey leaves. But the leaves are shiny and attractive, and this is one of those plants that's fully native, but your neighbors wouldn't know that. It also comes in a low variety, the Berberis repens, also called creeping Oregon grape. And here's the new foliage of the creeping Oregon grape, although both plants can have that. And in fall, it does have the, if it gets cold enough, it can get these bright red leaves, and it does have berries. They are sour, so people make jelly out of them. I eat them out of hand, but I often think they could have a little more sugar. No, they don't. So this one is not a local plant, but I included because it has big, like 4-inch across flowers. It's from the Sierra Nevada. It only grows in a couple places in the state. So it's very rare, but it's pretty easy to find in the trade. And those flowers are fragrant. So this is sometimes called mock orange, although we'll look at mock orange later. This one does need regular water. It doesn't have to be in a moist location, but I forgot to water mine over 2 weeks. Usually it gets once a week water, like many of my plants that need water get once a week water, and I didn't water it for 2 weeks and it was looking sad. So regular water, but it will grow in perfectly dark shade. It can get up to 6 feet high, although you often see it at 5 feet high. And it's one of those useful plants that's taller than it is wide, which isn't common in the native range. This is our native ceanothus, and our most local ceanothus really isn't blue. I'll show one blue one, and a lot of the blue ones are, freeze tolerant, but maybe not for Big Bear. And what I notice for native plants is as we get higher on the mountain, plants get paler and paler flowers. And so I think that there's more nighttime pollinators involved as we get higher on the mountain. It is backed up by black oak, the new leaves of the black oak. So many of you probably have seen this bright pink color. I am showing the Ceanothus leucodermis, but I'm not sure that it really gets up to 7,000 feet. There are a couple cultivars that might do Big Bear, but I haven't tried them, so I'm just not going to present that. Then we have the Mountain Mahogany. This one is showing Betuloides. This is looking with the light through these beautiful seed heads, but it does have cute flowers. And a very similar plant that I didn't show in this deck is the Apache plume. So they're both in the rose family. They both have beautiful seed heads that look great when they are backlit, either in the morning or late in the day. We have a couple of vines. Almost all our vines are deciduous, but this one is one of the easy ones. And you can find this one in the trade, and sometimes called Virgin's Bower, but it is kind of a fast covering plant. Here it is covering the chain link fence at the demonstration garden. So super easy, pretty fast, and I love the flowers. It has a related plant with kind of crazier looking flowers, but I love this one, and it's very durable. We do have coffeeberry in the mountains. I haven't tried bringing cultivated varieties from down the hill up to Big Bear, although they seem to do okay at around 6,000 feet. And so I think they might do fine higher up. Our more local variety is a little bit more sparse than this, and doesn't usually get this tall. This plant is about 8 feet tall, but I often see it more around 5 feet tall. Then we do have the flannel bush. This is, I think, really a cultivated variety, but it has those giant yellow flowers. And this is for dry, hot, sunny slopes. Do not plant it anywhere near the shade because it will sulk. But it's almost a water at once when you plant it and walk away kind of plant. So that's a great thing. And here is a little closer to the form that we would see on the mountains. And then we have the rabbit brush. I'm just showing it here because it's a great pollinator plant, and I will talk about it more in August. We do have mallow species up here. I'm not confident that we could find them in the trade, but they are stunning. And I took this picture in Big Bear, so I included it. We do have a few cactus. The beaver tail do grow at elevation. Sometimes the pads dry out a little bit, but the flowers are stunning and really important for pollination. The mock orange is vase-shaped up to 5 feet. It will kind of sprawl unless it's given a trellis or something hold it up, but it does have an amazing fragrance, and it could use a little extra moisture as well. I'm not going to talk about the rose that much, but the California rose is a bully. Woods rose can grow in a shady location though. We do have wolfberry. I threw it in there just because it's closely related to goji berry. The ribes aureum will grow at elevation, and I included it because even though it's not super local to Big Bear, it does have beautiful, very tasty currants. And then our more local currant is the Sierra currant, the Ribes niverans. And you probably have seen this if you ever went hiking. Then the star of our show is Salvia pachyphylla, the rose sage. And this one is in cultivation, but you can see this down in the desert. You can see it at the demonstration garden in a hot purple. The bracts have different colors. This is beloved by butterflies and hummingbirds. There you can see a slightly darker one taken by Jim Otterstrom. This is a plant that grows all over the mountain in a lot of locations. It's great for shade, but it will grow in the sun. It is creeping. There's 2 or 3 different species. I'm showing a species that's easy to obtain and is local. And it does have the berries, although birds are not that attracted to them because they have a lot of saponins in them, but they will eat them at the end of the season when there's nothing else to eat. And here's a detail of that just because I can. And here's the Chaparral Yucca. And then I'm just gonna go over the basics of native plants. So we did go through choosing plants. I'm not going to talk about getting rid of the lawn because I hope you don't have one, but I would entertain those questions at the end. The native ecology is really where I want to start. So conventional plants, if you are a good gardener and you would have used a lot of compost and maybe some fertilizer. And our ecology is different. It's mycorrhizal, so these beneficial fungi, as we know, go from tree to tree, but also from tree to shrub and from shrub to shrub. The plants do communicate, but they also use the mycorrhiza to share resources. So they share carbohydrates with the mycorrhiza, and the mycorrhiza share water and minerals with them. So you don't want to add a lot of compost to your system. It's better just to use the plants from that place. And if you put too much of high fertility, you can get kind of the lottery winner effect where the plant just gets really big and blows out and then uses all its resources, and then you don't have a plant anymore. So it can be tempting to do that if you have but try mulching first. And so here's a picture of the ectomycorrhiza, which are the ones that go on the outside of roots. And there are also endomycorrhiza that grow on the inside of roots. Here's a picture of mulch on the job. If you mulch too much, you can suppress some native pollinators, but until you have leaf droppings of your own from your own garden, it is helpful to mulch. I'll discuss this also at length with pollinators, but to get your garden going, having a good 2 inches of mulch is really helpful. And that can be just chipped, shredded tree or any other mulch, but just not compost. It could also include, up to 2 inches, the fire department says, of pine needles. If you want your pine needles to decompose faster, you can also put them through a small chipper shredder. Harbor Freight has a small one. When to plant. So the easiest for beginners is in the fall, and fall is not calendar fall except on the mountains. The Santa Ana winds can really inhibit plants from growing because they suck all the water out of it, and new plants won't have enough roots to get enough water. So usually I try and plant after the Santa Ana winds, although these days Sometimes I just try and protect them from the Santa Ana winds. I often have planted in October and watered them and walked away until summer. Although right now I plant all summer in the mountains now that I live here. And then a contractor that I work with has great success planting native trees in winter. So I haven't tried that myself, but he swears it worked. Most plants should be 1 gallon size. Even trees do better and faster at a smaller size. Only get that 24-inch box if your daughter is getting married at your house. I didn't include in this deck the picture of 2 same-size trees. One went in a 4-foot box and one went in a 15-gallon. But within 5 years, they were the same size. So we usually want to water them extensively. We want to water the hole. We want to water the plant. We want to water so much that they float back out of the hole, says one of the contractors, Greg Rubin. Watering to establishment, up here I usually water once a week, except for plants that say moist. And plants are established when they are 3 times the original size. I borrowed this slide from another deck, and so everyone is in the wildland urban interface. So it has been shown that watered native plants are more fire resistant than conventional plants. So, but that is not necessarily true of unwatered native plants. So you do want to give all your native plants some water, even the dry ones, but although the dry ones just not that much. Hand watering, I usually dig a basin, a big basin, the size of if you made a circle with your hands, that's how big, your arms and hands. I'm going to discuss irrigation at the next session in August. Is it August? Yes. Oh, drip and gray water are not really recommended for drought tolerant native plants, but you can use them on the meadow plants. So that would be things like the Cicericium and the strawberry. And I will talk about those plants at length next month. And then just a few fun pictures of natives. And then I'm gonna take questions. So I'm gonna exit out of the screen sharing, and probably I shouldn't in case I need to go back to a slide, but so
can you see the Q&A?
I can. So what do we have? People do, like nurseries do grow the sulfur buckwheat from seed, but honestly, that one is one that would be so much easier to get from a nursery. So not that easy from seed. And then some years the bearded irises don't bloom. So I'm not an expert on the not native irises, but I would suggest that the bearded irises are not being native might actually need some fertilizer. And also there is some specificity for cultivating iris, and so some of them actually need a certain amount of like tying up and things like that to keep the foliage. Don't cut the foliage back before it's done. And then let's see, where is the demonstration garden? It's on Fox Farm Road across from, I think, the Kmart, below, let's see, to the north of Big Bear Boulevard. And I think that's all the questions. Do we have something in the chat also? At this point, if you have a question, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and just ask the question.
And if you are unable to unmute yourself, I don't remember, we may have that ability blocked. Just go ahead and raise your hand. I should be able to see it, and then I can unmute you. And while we're waiting, in case anybody's still typing on questions, I wanted to mention our native plant rebate program. That's a new program that we just started offering this year. So we have an entire plant list that's available on our website, but we've also given copies to our local nurseries, hunters, and help me out, Lauren, what's hood growers and Emmingers. We have heard people have had the best luck with hood growers, though, because they do have a difficult time, as Orchid has mentioned, sometimes it's just really difficult to find those native plants. We just recently opened it up. It does not have to be purchased at a local nursery anymore. So if you can prove that it is actually the plant that's on our list, the scientific name and everything. So if it's on the seed packet, if it's on the plant labeling, if you get it at one of those plant sales that Orchid mentioned down at Rancho Santa Ana or Tree of Life or somewhere like that, and you can show that it's one of the native plants that's on our list, then we have a rebate program. It's up to $10 per plant, up to 10 plants per address. And so you just need to keep a copy of your receipt, take a picture of the plant itself and any kind of labeling that indicates what it is, and then pictures of that plant or the seeds actually in your yard here in Big Bear. So even if it's seeds, I know you won't be able to really see them in the picture, but get a picture up close and then get a picture a little bit further away so that we have some kind of context as to where it is. And then you can submit all of that to us at the DWP along with our plant list. And that goes as a credit back on your account. So you can get up to $100 in free native plants. So really encouraging people to take advantage of that this year. It's a grant funded program through our watershed authority. So we're not sure exactly how long it will last. Once we run out of funds, we run out. So if you're thinking about planting some of that stuff this year, please do take advantage of that program and feel free to email us or call us with any questions that you might have.
So I do see that there is a question about the grape soda lupin, and you can grow that one from seed, and that seed is pretty widely available, but the seed does need to be stratified. So in nature, it is not going to grow. It's not going to grow. Actually, sorry, it doesn't need to be stratified, but it does need to be. Oh, I'm losing the term. But it grows in landslides or through disturbance. So you either need to take some sandpaper to the seed, which is kind of a tedious way, or the easy way is to pour some 180-degree water, so not quite boiling. If you have a candy thermometer, it's helpful. And do not do this, with your kitchen Pyrex. Use an old pot or pan that you're not going to use for food anymore. And so you just pour the water on the seeds, let them soak overnight, and then plant them. And while we're talking about wildflowers, it really, wildflowers in general, I mean, I have put a lot of wildflowers out on the mulch, but up here, I would say you need good seed to soil contact. And so, dig under the mulch, put your wildflowers out. Some people mix them with sand, and at Rancho Santa Ana, they make their wildflower drifts with gravel. So one reason I don't use gravel that often in the landscape is it's an easy place to germinate things. So we're not talking big gravel, we're talking about superfine pea gravel or playground sand. And that helps hold enough moisture. You could also use vermiculite, although I try and limit my use of vermiculite just because of the toxicity questions. They swear it isn't anymore, but not sure. Anyway, I'm not sure we have any more questions. If you're looking for the plant list, it is on the Big Bear Lake Department of Water website. And I think that's all I have for today.
Thank you guys all for coming. We did have this webinar recorded, so this is our first one, so we're gonna figure out how to get that recording out, and hopefully you should be able to access that. In case you missed anything, you can always go back to it as long as you're a registered attendee. Again, just want to mention, if you're not registered for our other webinars, please do feel free to email us, conservation@bbldwp.com. That'll go straight to Lauren, our co-host here. And if you have any questions, if you didn't get the answers to the questions or something like that, just shoot us an email and we'll be happy to get you anything we possibly can. And have a great day. And we hope to see you next Wednesday at 10 o'clock for our Firewise session.
Thank you.
And Lauren, if you can hear me, just wanted to let you know, I just copied and pasted the questions so that we have copies of those in case anybody asks. And then I was taking notes throughout in case.
I typed up a whole bunch of notes too, so.
Okay, great.
Good.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. Good job.
Good job to you.
I think it went pretty seamless in my opinion.
Yeah, no, she took good lead there, so.
Yeah, cool.
Happy
All
with
right.
it.
All right. I'm still available if you need anything. I'll probably be on here for a little while longer preparing for next week and that presentation at the garden club. So yeah, just feel free to hit me up on Teams if you need anything.
Okay, same to you. Let me know if
Okay.
you need any help or assistance. All right.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Bye.